My family hid the party from me. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I've always believed in family. Not in some naive Hallmark movie way, but in the deep, bone-deep certainty that family means showing up for each other, no matter what. That blood is thicker than water, that when the world gets cold and cruel, you can always count on the people who share your DNA to have your back. I lived my entire 34 years believing this truth so completely that I never questioned it, never thought to examine it too closely. Until last Thursday night, when I discovered that my family had thrown my father's 70th birthday party without me. Not just forgotten to invite me, not accidentally overlooked me in the planning. Deliberately, intentionally, excluded me from what should have been one of the most important family gatherings of our lives. The discovery happened in the most mundane way possible. I was scrolling through Instagram at 11 p.m. procrastinating on a work presentation when I saw it. A photo posted by my cousin Rachel, who I follow but rarely interact with online. The image showed a crowded backyard, string lights twinkling overhead, a long table laden with food. In the center, my father sat beaming in a lawn chair, wearing the blue shirt I'd given him last Christmas, surrounded by what looked like our entire extended family. The caption read, "Amazing night celebrating Uncle Jim's 70th. So grateful for family moments like these. Blessed family, 70th, love my family." I stared at the screen for a full minute, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. There was my mother, laughing as she served cake. My brother Michael, raising a beer and a toast. My sister Jennifer with her kids. My Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda. My cousins. Even some family friends I recognized. The whole gathering looked warm and joyful and complete. Except I wasn't there. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the other photos Rachel had posted. 23 images in total, a complete documentation of what was clearly a major family celebration. I appeared in exactly 0 of them, because I hadn't been there, because no one had told me it was happening. I called my mother immediately, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. "David?" she answered on the 3rd ring, her voice slightly slurred. She'd been drinking, probably wine, probably celebrating. "Honey, it's so late. Is everything okay?" "Mom," I said, and my voice came out hoarse and strange. "I just saw Rachel's Instagram. Dad's party. Why wasn't I invited?" The silence that followed lasted forever. I could hear voices in the background, could hear my father's distinctive laugh echoing from somewhere in their house. The party was clearly still going on, and here I was, sitting alone in my apartment, finding out about it through social media. "Oh, David," Mom said finally, and her voice was full of something I couldn't identify. Guilt? Pity? "I meant to call you about that." "Meant to call me?" I repeated. "Mom, it was Dad's 70th birthday. I've been planning for weeks what to get him. I asked you last month when we were going to celebrate." "I know, honey, but what?" The words came out louder than I intended. "What possible reason could there be for not inviting your own son to his father's birthday party?" Another pause. "David, maybe we should talk about this tomorrow when everyone's sobered up a bit." "No," I said firmly. "We're going to talk about it now. I want to know why my entire family decided I wasn't worth including in Dad's 70th birthday celebration." Mom sighed heavily. "It wasn't like that, David. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "Look," she said, and now her voice was getting defensive. "We just thought, given everything that's been going on lately, maybe it would be better to keep things small and peaceful." "Small?" I laughed bitterly. "Mom, I counted at least 30 people in those photos. How is that small?" "Small for us," she said weakly. The conversation went around in circles for another 10 minutes, with Mom deflecting and making excuses until finally she admitted she was too drunk to have this discussion and hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen at midnight, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept scrolling through those photos, studying every face, trying to understand how this had happened, how my entire family had planned and executed a major celebration without me, how they had all looked so happy and relaxed in those pictures, like my absence hadn't even been noticed. The worst part was remembering the conversation I'd had with my mother 3 weeks earlier. I'd called to ask about Dad's birthday, suggesting we plan something special since it was a milestone. She'd been vague, said they were still figuring things out, that she'd let me know when they had more details. I'd assumed she meant they were still in the early planning stages. Now I realized they'd already planned everything, they just hadn't planned to include me. I'd always been the family organizer. Growing up, I was the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, who made sure we had reservations for Mother's Day dinner, who coordinated schedules so we could all get together for holidays. Even as an adult, I was usually the one pushing for family gatherings, the one who made sure we celebrated the important moments. 3 years ago, when my grandmother turned 90, I'd spent weeks organizing her party. I'd rented the community center, hired a caterer, created a photo slideshow of her life, coordinated with relatives across 3 states to make sure everyone could attend. It had been a beautiful celebration, and everyone had thanked me for making it happen. Last year, for my parents' anniversary, I'd arranged for the whole family to go on a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I'd researched locations, made all the bookings, planned activities, even arranged for a photographer to take family portraits. It had been one of the best weekends we'd had together in years. And now, for my father's 70th birthday, a celebration that should have been one of the most important of our family's history, they'd all gotten together and decided I shouldn't be there. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't imagine sitting through meetings and pretending everything was normal when my world had been turned upside down. Instead, I spent the day trying to piece together what had led to this moment. I started thinking about the past few months, looking for clues I might have missed. There had been some tension in the family lately, but nothing that seemed serious enough to warrant complete exclusion. My brother Michael and I had had a disagreement about politics at Easter dinner. My sister Jennifer and I had gotten into an argument about her kids' behavior at a restaurant. I'd been frustrated with my parents about their reluctance to make plans for Dad's retirement. But these were normal family conflicts, the kind of minor friction that happens in every family. I couldn't believe they were serious enough to result in this. I called Jennifer around lunchtime. She answered on the first ring, which surprised me. "David," she said, and her voice was carefully neutral. "I was wondering when you'd call." "So you knew," I said. "You knew I'd find out about the party." "Of course I knew you'd find out," she said. "We're not idiots, David. We know you follow Rachel on Instagram." The casual admission hit me like a slap. They'd known I would see the photos. They'd thrown the party anyway, fully aware that I would discover I'd been excluded. "Then why?" I asked. "Jennifer, why would you do this to me?" She was quiet for a moment. "David, do you really not know? Do you honestly have no idea why we might have wanted one family gathering without you?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I have no idea." Jennifer sighed. "David, you're exhausting. You turn every family gathering into a performance where you have to be the center of attention. You plan everything. You control everything. You make everything about you and your vision of how things should be. Sometimes we just want to relax and enjoy each other's company without having to navigate around your need to be in charge." The accusation was so unexpected, so completely contrary to how I saw myself, that I couldn't respond for several seconds. "I'm not trying to control anything," I said finally. "I'm trying to help. I organize things because I want us to spend time together. I want our family to be close." "But you organize things the way you want them organized," Jennifer said. "You pick the restaurants you like, you plan the activities you think are fun, you create these elaborate celebrations that are more about showing off your organizational skills than they are about actually celebrating the person. And if anyone suggests doing something differently, you get upset and act like we're being ungrateful." I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. The person Jennifer was describing didn't sound like me at all. In my mind, I was the considerate family member who made sure we all stayed connected, who put effort into making gatherings special and memorable. "Even if that were true," I said, "which I don't think it is, that's not a reason to exclude me from Dad's birthday. That's something we could have talked about." We tried talking to you, David. We've all tried, but you don't listen. You just get defensive and act like we're attacking you for caring about the family. When? I demanded. When did you try to talk to me about this? Remember Easter, when Michael suggested we just order pizza instead of going to that expensive restaurant you'd picked? You spent 20 minutes explaining why pizza wasn't appropriate for a family dinner, why we needed to do something more meaningful. You couldn't just let us have pizza. I did remember that conversation, but I remembered it differently. In my memory, I'd been trying to advocate for making Easter special, for treating it as the important family holiday it was instead of just throwing together a casual meal. Or last Christmas, Jennifer continued, when I mentioned that the kids might have more fun with a less structured gift exchange, and you launched into this whole speech about family traditions and the importance of ceremony. You made me feel guilty for even suggesting that we might do things differently. Again, I remembered that moment, but I remembered being disappointed that Jennifer didn't seem to value the traditions that had made our childhood Christmases so special. I'd been trying to preserve something meaningful, not control the situation. Look, Jennifer said, we're not trying to hurt you, David, but sometimes we need a break from your intensity. Sometimes we want to just be together without feeling like we're performing in the David show. The David show? I repeated, stung. That's not look. That came out wrong. But David, you have to admit that you have very specific ideas about how family gatherings should go, and you get upset when things don't match your vision. It's exhausting to always be worried about disappointing you or not living up to your standards. I ended the call feeling more confused than ever. Jennifer's version of me was unrecognizable, a controlling perfectionist who imposed his will on every family gathering. But as I sat in my empty apartment that afternoon, I found myself revisiting those memories she'd mentioned, trying to see them through her eyes. Had I really been controlling? I'd always thought I was being helpful, taking on the burden of organization so everyone else could relax and enjoy themselves. But maybe what I saw as helpfulness, they saw as micromanaging. I called Michael that evening. The conversation was shorter and more brutal. David, he said after I'd explained why I was calling, I love you, but you're a lot. You're a lot to be around, and sometimes we need family time that isn't dominated by your agenda. What agenda? I asked. Your agenda of proving that you're the best son, the most devoted family member, the one who cares the most. It's like you're constantly competing in some contest that the rest of us don't even know we're part of. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'm not competing with anyone. I just want us to be close. But your version of close is exhausting, David. It's all these elaborate plans and meaningful moments and perfect celebrations. Sometimes I just want to sit around and watch TV with Dad, or take him out for a burger without having to worry about whether it's special enough for you. I never said casual things weren't good enough, I protested. You didn't have to say it. You have this way of making everyone feel like they're not trying hard enough if they're not putting in the same level of effort you are. Like when you organized that anniversary trip for Mom and Dad and it was amazing, but then for months afterward you kept talking about how important it was that we'd made the effort to do something really special, how family needs to be a priority. It made the rest of us feel like everything we'd done before wasn't enough. I hung up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My brother, who I'd always thought appreciated my efforts to keep our family connected, saw me as some kind of demanding perfectionist who made everyone feel inadequate. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I looked back through my own social media posts from family gatherings over the past few years. What I saw made me uncomfortable. There were dozens of posts about family celebrations I'd organized, photos of elaborate dinner tables I'd arranged, detailed captions about the meaningful family time we'd shared, lengthy descriptions of the planning and thought that had gone into each gathering. In post after post, I talked about the importance of family, about how much effort it took to maintain close relationships, about how rewarding it was when everyone made the commitment to show up for each other. Seen all together like this, the posts did read a bit like lectures. Like I was constantly instructing the world, and by extension, my family, on the proper way to value family relationships. Like I was positioning myself as the family member who cared the most, who tried the hardest, who understood the importance of connection better than anyone else. But that wasn't my intention. My intention had been to celebrate our family, to document the love and care we had for each other. Hadn't it? I spent the weekend alone, something that rarely happened anymore. Usually, weekends involved some kind of family activity. Sunday dinner, a visit to my parents, a gathering for someone's birthday or anniversary. Being cut off from all of that left me with a strange, echoing emptiness. I found myself noticing things I'd never paid attention to before, like how quiet my apartment was, like how I didn't actually have many friends outside of my family relationships, like how much of my identity was tied up in being the devoted son, the caring brother, the family organizer. On Sunday evening, my father called me. I almost didn't answer, still raw from the conversations with my siblings, but something made me pick up. "David," he said, and his voice was warm and familiar and full of the affection I'd grown up with. "I wanted to call and thank you for the birthday gift you sent. The book about the history of jazz is perfect. I've already started reading it." I'd mailed his present on Tuesday, along with a card I'd spent an hour writing, trying to express how much he meant to me and how proud I was to be his son. "I'm glad you like it, Dad," I said, and my voice came out more emotional than I'd intended. There was a pause. "David, I know you're hurt about the party. Your mother told me you called." "I am hurt," I admitted. "Dad, it was your 70th birthday. I can't understand how the family could celebrate without me there." "I know," he said quietly. "I wanted you there, son. I asked about inviting you." "And?" Dad sighed. "Your siblings felt like having you there might create some tension. They wanted the evening to be relaxed and low-key." "Tension about what?" "David, you have to understand. You put a lot of pressure on these family gatherings. Maybe more pressure than you realize. When you're organizing something, everyone feels like they have to live up to your expectations, like they have to perform gratitude and family togetherness. It can be overwhelming." The word hung in the air between us. Overwhelming. My own father thought I was overwhelming. "But Dad," I said, and I could hear the desperation creeping into my voice. "I just want us to be close. I want our family to matter to each other." "It does matter, David. We all love each other very much. But love doesn't have to look the same for everyone. Your way of showing love is through grand gestures and perfect celebrations. Michael's way is through showing up and being present. Jennifer's way is through accepting people as they are. Your mother shows love by taking care of people's daily needs. None of these ways is wrong, but when you insist that your way is the only way that really counts, it makes everyone else feel like their love isn't good enough." I was crying now, though I was trying not to let him hear it. "I never meant to make anyone feel that way." "I know you didn't, son, but impact matters more than intention sometimes." "So what now?" I asked. "Am I just not part of the family anymore?" "Of course you're part of the family," Dad said firmly. "You'll always be our son and their brother. But David, you might need to think about how you want to be part of this family going forward. Maybe consider that there might be other ways to show love and stay connected that don't involve quite so much orchestration." After we hung up, I sat in my living room and really looked around for the first time in years. The space was nice enough, but it was clearly the home of someone who spent most of his time elsewhere. There were family photos everywhere, but very few pictures of friends or solo activities. My bookshelf was full of books about relationships, communication, and family dynamics. Like I'd been studying how to be the perfect family member. On my coffee table sat 3 different planning notebooks where I kept track of family birthdays, anniversaries, holiday schedules, and gift ideas. I had spreadsheets on my computer with everyone's favorite restaurants, preferred gift types, and important dates. I'd turned family relationships into a project I could manage and optimize. The realization was crushing. I'd become so focused on being the perfect family member that I'd lost sight of just being myself within my family. Every interaction had become an opportunity to demonstrate my devotion. Every gathering a chance to prove my value through superior organization and thoughtfulness. But somewhere along the way, my family had stopped seeing my efforts as expressions of love and started seeing them as demands for recognition. My siblings weren't ungrateful. They were exhausted by the constant pressure to match my level of investment in family performance. I spent the next few days calling in sick to work and doing something I hadn't done in years. I examined my life outside of my family relationships. What I found was concerning. I had work colleagues but no real friends. I had hobbies that were oriented around family activities, cooking for family dinners, photography for family events, research for family vacation planning. I went to church with my parents, worked out at a gym near their house, even got my hair cut at the same barber my father had used for decades. Somewhere in my adult life, I'd made my family my entire world. And in doing so, I'd made myself a burden to them. The confrontation I'd been dreading came the following weekend. Mom called and asked if I wanted to come over for Sunday dinner. The first family invitation I'd received since discovering the party. I knew this was their attempt to include me again, probably after feeling guilty about the exclusion. I almost said no. Part of me wanted to stay away, to let them see what family dinners were like without my overwhelming presence. But I needed answers, needed to understand how we'd gotten to this point. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. The conversation was awkward and stilted, like everyone was walking on eggshells. Jennifer's kids, who usually ran to me when I arrived, seemed subdued. Michael barely made eye contact. Even my parents seemed nervous. We made it through dinner with painful small talk about work and weather. But when Mom started clearing the dishes, I knew I couldn't leave without addressing what had happened. "We need to talk about the party," I said. The room went silent. Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances. "David," Mom started, "maybe we should—" "No," I interrupted. "We're going to talk about this. I need to understand how we got to the point where my own family thought it was better to exclude me from Dad's birthday than to deal with whatever problems they have with me." Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "David, it wasn't about excluding you specifically. It was about having one gathering that could just be easy." "Easy meaning without me?" "Without the pressure," Jennifer corrected. "David, do you have any idea what it's like to go to a family gathering that you've organized? You have this vision of how everything should go, and if anything deviates from that vision, you get this look on your face like we've ruined something important." "What look?" I asked, genuinely confused. "That disappointed, martyred look," Michael said. "Like you've put all this effort into creating a perfect family moment, and we're too selfish or ungrateful to appreciate it properly." I felt defensive anger rising in my chest. "I have never asked anyone to be grateful for anything I've done." "You don't have to ask," Jennifer said. "It's written all over your face, and in your social media posts, and in the way you talk about family obligations and the importance of showing up for each other. It's this constant undercurrent of judgment about who's trying hard enough and who isn't." "That's not—" "I don't judge anyone." "Remember Mom's birthday last year?" Michael asked. "You'd planned that elaborate brunch at that expensive place downtown. Jennifer's babysitter canceled at the last minute, so she brought the kids along. They were tired and cranky, and the restaurant wasn't really set up for children. Instead of just rolling with it, you kept making comments about how we should have planned better, how family celebrations deserved more care and attention." I did remember that brunch. I remembered being frustrated that what should have been a sophisticated celebration of our mother had turned into chaos management. But I didn't remember making Jennifer feel bad about the situation. "I was just disappointed," I said. "I wanted Mom's birthday to be special." "But it was special," Mom said quietly. "I was surrounded by my children and grandchildren. That made it special, not the restaurant or the perfect atmosphere." "But Jennifer brought the kids after specifically saying she'd get a sitter," I protested. "Because her sitter canceled," Jennifer said, her voice rising. "Life happens, David. Sometimes things don't go according to plan, and that doesn't mean someone failed or that the occasion is ruined." "I never said it was ruined. You didn't have to say it. You sulked through the entire meal. You made everyone feel guilty for not living up to your standards." I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. In my memory, I'd been trying to salvage a special occasion that had been disrupted by poor planning. In their memories, I'd been a judgmental perfectionist who'd made everyone uncomfortable. "I think," Dad said carefully, "that the problem isn't that you care about family, David. The problem is that you've turned caring about family into a performance, and then you've made the rest of us feel like we're failing the performance." "I don't understand what you mean by performance." Dad leaned forward. "Son, every family gathering has become an event that needs to be documented and celebrated and made into something meaningful. You can't just come over and watch the game with me. It has to be quality father-son time with intentional conversation. We can't just order pizza. It has to be a carefully chosen restaurant that creates the right atmosphere for family bonding. Nothing can just be normal anymore. The accusation hit me hard because I could hear the truth in it. I had been trying to make every family interaction meaningful to avoid the casual taking each other for granted that I'd seen tear other families apart. But what's wrong with wanting our family time to be meaningful? I asked. Nothing, Mom said gently. But David, meaning doesn't come from perfect execution. It comes from just being together, enjoying each other's company. When you put so much pressure on creating meaningful moments, it stops feeling natural. It starts feeling like work. And the rest of us start feeling like we're constantly being evaluated, Jennifer added. Like you're always watching to see if we're appreciating the family enough, caring enough, trying hard enough. I looked around the table at my family. These people I loved more than anything in the world, who I'd spent years trying to bring closer together. And I realized they were right. I had been watching them, evaluating their level of engagement, feeling frustrated when they seemed to take our relationships for granted. So the party, I said slowly. You excluded me because you wanted one family gathering where you could just relax. We excluded you because we wanted one family gathering where we didn't have to worry about living up to your standards, Michael said. Where we could just be ourselves without feeling like we were being graded on our family performance. The words stung, but I was beginning to understand. And was it better without me there? My family exchanged glances, and the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. It was different, Mom said finally. More relaxed, maybe. But David, you're our son and brother. We missed you being there. But not enough to invite me, I pointed out. We were scared, Jennifer admitted. Scared that if we invited you, you'd take over the planning and turn it into one of your elaborate productions. Dad specifically said he wanted something low-key, just backyard barbecue, nothing fancy. But we know how you feel about casual gatherings for important occasions. She was right. If they'd included me in planning Dad's 70th birthday, I probably would have pushed for something more elaborate. I would have argued that a milestone birthday deserved more than a backyard barbecue, would have suggested a restaurant or a party venue, would have wanted to create something memorable and special. I would have respected Dad's wishes, I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. Would you? Michael asked. Because your track record suggests otherwise. Remember when I said I wanted a simple wedding, and you spent months sending me articles about the importance of wedding traditions and how meaningful ceremonies create lasting memories? I had done that. At the time, I'd thought I was helping him understand that his wedding was worth celebrating properly, not just throwing together a casual ceremony. I was trying to help you see that your wedding was worth celebrating, I said. But I never said it wasn't worth celebrating, Michael replied. I just wanted to celebrate it differently than you thought I should. And instead of respecting that, you made me feel like I was shortchanging my future wife and our families by not wanting a big production. The pattern was becoming clear, and it was devastating. Over and over, I'd taken my family's preferences for simplicity and casual connection and interpreted them as a lack of proper appreciation for our relationships. I'd appointed myself the guardian of family values, the one who would ensure we didn't take each other for granted. But in doing so, I'd made it impossible for them to just enjoy being together without feeling judged. I never meant to make anyone feel judged, I said, and my voice cracked with the weight of this realization. I've seen so many families drift apart because they stopped making the effort. I didn't want that to happen to us. But we weren't drifting apart, Dad said. We've always been close, David. Maybe not in the way you think closeness should look, but we've always loved each other and been there for each other. I know, but... No, Mom interrupted gently. David, listen to what your father is saying. You've been so afraid of us not being close enough that you've been forcing a kind of closeness that doesn't feel natural to the rest of us. I sat in silence, absorbing this. For years, I'd seen myself as the family member who worked the hardest to maintain our relationships, who cared the most about keeping us connected. But what my family experienced was someone who constantly pressured them to perform connection in ways that felt artificial and demanding. So what happens now? I asked. How do I fix this? The question hung in the air. Everyone looked uncomfortable, like they'd been hoping we wouldn't get to this part of the conversation. Maybe, Jennifer said carefully, you could try just being with us sometimes instead of trying to create experiences with us. What's the difference? Being with us means coming over and watching TV with Dad, or helping Mom in the garden, or just sitting around talking about nothing important. Creating experiences means turning everything into an event that needs to be planned and documented and made meaningful. Michael nodded. Like, sometimes I just want to hang out with my brother. I don't need it to be quality sibling bonding time with intentional conversation about our relationship. I felt lost. But if we don't make the effort to create meaningful moments, how do we stay close? By just showing up, Dad said simply. By being present for the ordinary moments, not just the special occasions. By enjoying each other's company without having to prove anything. David, Mom said, you're welcome here anytime. You always have been. But you don't need to bring flowers and wine and elaborate plans every time you visit. You can just come over. You can just be our son. The simplicity of it was overwhelming. I'd made family relationships so complicated, so effortful, that I'd forgotten they could just be easy. But I also felt scared. If I wasn't the family organizer, the one who planned gatherings and remembered important dates and created meaningful experiences, then who was I? What value did I bring to these relationships? What if I don't know how to do that? I asked. What if I don't know how to just be your son without trying to be the best son? The question revealed more than I'd intended. It showed how much of my identity was tied up in being exceptional at family relationships, in being the one who cared the most and tried the hardest. Then maybe that's something you need to figure out, Jennifer said, not unkindly. David, we don't need you to be the best son or the best brother. We just need you to be yourself. But what if myself isn't enough? The words slipped out before I could stop them, revealing the fear that had been driving all of this behavior. What if, without all the elaborate gestures and perfect planning and constant effort to prove my devotion, my family wouldn't find me valuable enough to keep around? Oh, David, Mom said, and her voice was full of sadness. Of course you're enough. You've always been enough. We don't love you because you organize parties and remember birthdays and create perfect family moments. We love you because you're you. But I'm not that interesting without all of that, I said. I don't have much of a life outside of family stuff. I don't have friends or hobbies or stories to tell. All I have is this. My devotion to all of you. The admission hung in the air, and I could see the concern on everyone's faces. They were realizing, as I was realizing, that I'd made them responsible for my entire sense of purpose and identity. Maybe that's the real problem, Dad said gently. Maybe you need to build a life that's fulfilling on its own, so that family can be a part of your life instead of the whole thing. The conversation continued for another hour, but I was emotionally exhausted. By the end of it, we'd established some new understandings. I would try to step back from managing every family interaction. They would try to be more direct about their needs and preferences instead of just going along with my plans, and we would all work on finding ways to connect that felt natural rather than forced. But as I drove home that night, I felt hollowed out and lost. For 34 years, I'd defined myself by my devotion to my family, by my role as the son and brother who cared the most. Without that identity, I wasn't sure who I was. The next few months were some of the hardest of my adult life. I had to learn how to be in relationship with my family without constantly trying to orchestrate meaningful experiences. I had to resist the urge to plan elaborate celebrations for birthdays and holidays, had to let other people take the lead on family gatherings, had to sit with the discomfort of not being the center of family organization. But I also started building a life outside of family relationships. I joined a hiking group, started taking photography classes, began volunteering at a local literacy program. I made friends who knew me as David the marketing professional or David the photography enthusiast, not David the devoted family member. Slowly, I began to understand what my family had been trying to tell me. Connection didn't have to be constantly proved or performed. Love didn't have to be demonstrated through perfect gestures and elaborate plans. Sometimes the most meaningful moments were the unplanned ones, the casual conversations, the quiet times spent just being together. My relationship with my family did change. I stopped being the primary organizer of family events, and surprisingly, The family continued to get together regularly. Jennifer started planning some gatherings, Michael took over coordinating Dad's retirement celebration, and Mom began hosting casual Sunday dinners that were actually more relaxed and enjoyable than the structured events I used to plan. But I also learned something painful about the nature of family relationships. Love doesn't automatically mean acceptance, and acceptance doesn't automatically mean inclusion. My family loved me, but they had also found me exhausting to be around. They'd needed space from my intensity, and they'd been willing to exclude me to get it. That knowledge changed something fundamental in how I understood our relationships. I was still their son and brother, but I was also someone who could be too much, someone who could drive them away if I wasn't careful. The unconditional acceptance I'd always assumed was part of family love had limits, and I'd found those limits. A year later, at Dad's 71st birthday, a casual backyard gathering that I attended but didn't plan, I watched my family laughing and talking and enjoying each other's company. I participated without performing, contributed without controlling, and found that I could enjoy the moment without needing to orchestrate it. But late that night, after I'd gone home to my apartment that was now filled with my own interests and friendships, I thought about that party they'd hidden from me. I thought about how easily they'd celebrated without me, how relaxed they'd looked in those photos, how complete their joy had seemed despite my absence. The wound had healed, but the scar remained. I'd learned to be a better family member, but I'd also learned that family love, like all love, was conditional. They loved me, but they loved me more when I was easier to be around. They wanted me there, but they could be happy without me if necessary. It was a harder, more complex understanding of family than the one I'd grown up with. Family wasn't an unbreakable bond that guaranteed unconditional acceptance. It was a choice that people made every day, to include you, to tolerate your flaws, to work around your difficult edges. And like all choices, it could be unmade if the cost became too high. I still go to family gatherings, I still love them deeply, still want to be close to them. But now I carry the knowledge that my place in their lives is earned, not guaranteed. I have to be someone they want to be around, not just someone they're related to. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never seen those Instagram photos, if I'd never learned about the party they'd hidden from me. Would I have continued in my patterns of orchestrated family devotion, slowly driving them further away without realizing it? Would they have eventually cut me out entirely? Or would I have learned to read the signs of their exhaustion and adjusted my behavior? I'll never know. What I do know is that the exclusion, as painful as it was, forced me to confront truths about myself and my relationships that I might have avoided indefinitely otherwise. It shattered my illusions about unconditional family love, but it also freed me from the prison of trying to be the perfect family member. These days, when I spend time with my family, it's because we genuinely enjoy each other's company, not because I've created an elaborate reason for us to be together. When they include me in their plans, I know it's because they want me there, not because they feel obligated by blood or guilt. But on quiet nights in my apartment, when I'm scrolling through social media and see photos of family gatherings I wasn't part of, I still feel an echo of that original shock. The reminder that love, even family love, has boundaries. That inclusion is a gift, not a right. That sometimes the people who know us best are also the ones who need the most distance from us. The party they hid from me taught me that family isn't about showing up perfectly for each other. It's about showing up authentically, even when authenticity is messy and imperfect and sometimes too much to handle. It taught me that being loved doesn't mean being needed, and being needed doesn't mean being wanted. Most importantly, it taught me that I am responsible for making myself someone that others want to include in their lives, not just someone they feel obligated to include. That's a harder way to live, but it's also more honest. When my family chooses to spend time with me now, I know it's a real choice, not just the path of least resistance. The scar from that exclusion will always be with me. There will always be a part of me that remembers how easily they celebrated without me, how complete their joy looked in those photos. But there's also a part of me that's grateful for the wake-up call, painful as it was. I learned that family love isn't unconditional. It's something more complex and fragile and ultimately more meaningful. It's love that has to be tended and earned and maintained. Love that can be lost if you're not careful with it. That knowledge makes me more careful with the family relationships I have, more aware of how my actions affect the people I love, more grateful for their continued presence in my life. The party they hid from me ended up being the beginning of learning how to be a family member rather than just performing the role of one. And perhaps, in the end, that was worth all the pain of exclusion. Perhaps being left out was the only way I could learn how to truly be let in.